Welcome to Tyrompers No Limit Podcast.
What is going on, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen? Thanks for joining Tyrompers No Limit episode. This is number 35. We are pumped today because we have a man that grew up as a missionary child and traveled all over the world. This is a man that believes happiness, joy, and zest are a choice. This is a man that in 2020 had his lungs collapse, and 2 years later in 2022 ran 48 miles in 48 hours. This is a man that's a coach, leader, excellent father, husband, man I admire and am proud to call my brother. This is Mr. Benjamin, aka Joy Protocol. Welcome to the pod, brother. Thanks for joining.
Hey, what's going on, man? So good to be here.
Man, well, this is a long time in the making. I think I was sick for 10 days. Then we had some technical issues. Then, all these different things. So the enemy did not want this to happen. So I appreciate you coming on, brother. Thank you.
Technology, man. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because anytime you see just little things start getting in the way, I think it begs the question, like, okay, is this a door closing, or is this just like some resistance showing that there's something worthwhile here? So,
one thing you messaged me yesterday when my Zoom crashed the fourth time in 9 minutes or something. I'm like, this is it. I'm a patient guy, but I can't do it anymore, man. You sent me something that said, what was your quote? But I wrote this down. It said, resistance. What was that?
Resistance is futile. No, I forget exactly, but something about resistance. It's like a chance to practice gratitude, if nothing else.
Yeah. So I shifted my mindset around like that. You helped me yesterday, so thank you, man. I appreciate it. But for anybody who's on here and maybe doesn't know a little about you, Benjamin, do you mind just kind of giving them the little 2-minute elevator speech, man? Who you are, what you're about?
Yeah. So I'm a self-leadership coach, and I work primarily with men. Not necessarily exclusively, but it's like 85% men. And really, I help people get from a state of just kind of being like stuck and kind of listless, which I think you and I both, have gone through and understand that state. Going from that to a state of fulfillment and purpose, basically, there are practical strategies that you can use to increase your physical, mental, spiritual, emotional energy. And it's the type of thing where, there's this fallacy of, I hear this a lot. I can't make it out to the field because, I haven't run in so long. I'm not there yet. And it's like, if you start with the action, of anything that you want to build in your life, then like, the thing that you're looking for follows. Like you just come out to the field, you just come out to the gym, or, you just come out to the, whatever it might be, and you do it consistently. And then you're like, oh my gosh, like I have the energy I've been seeking by doing the actions that energetic people take. Right. And
the big thing is just starting, man. That's a very, I get that question a lot. Well, how do you get up when you don't feel motivated? And I'm always like, this is a very Jocko Willink type answer. You get up, you literally make yourself stand up, and you put one foot in front of the other, whether you feel like it or not. And then over time, you kind of start to align with that hat. Like, I can't imagine not getting up at this point because I've just been doing it for so long,
Yeah.
But
I think of it as, like aiming, like, like I'm not big into weapons, but my brother has a ton of rifles, and a lot of my family members love hunting and stuff. And so, if you have a gun and you just kind of point it in a general direction, like you might hit something, but if you take those 2 seconds to aim and figure out, okay, where do I want to, at least where do I want to hit? Then you have a better chance. And then from then you can increase your skill. And it's the same with our lives. It's like, if you're just sort of hoping like, I hope one day I wake up and I have energy and the world's not mean to me anymore. It's like, come on, because if you do want a life that is, enjoyable and energetic and whatever else, fill in the blank, what you would describe as an ideal life, you can actually design that and then backwards plan your way toward it,
Amen.
Yeah. So one of the early things that I connected with you on was you had a thread basically about the state of your marriage and kind of like the before and after. And you've had a lot of, different tweets and threads that have shown your journey from, basically this state of kind of being lackluster toward being like, nope, not gonna stand for that anymore. And so that's one thing that I love about you, man.
Yeah, well, I love many things and admire many things about you, man. I think until we hopped on this pod, our relationship was like once every few months, I'd send you a shirtless video out for a walk. I love that tweet, brother. That fires me up. And you do the same thing. And I'm just you're a guy that you talk a lot about that reverse engineering the life you want. And, I do see a lot of men today, I'd say, just stuck in this life, what I would call quiet desperation, right? Like they go to a job office they maybe don't love, and they don't feel super respected in their own home. They just kind of feel like they're floating through, they're existing. They're watching other people play sports on TV or watching other shows. They're just kind of escaping with alcohol. They're not really living the life that they truly want, and they're just on autopilot. And what you said, man, I got chills when you said it, because I remember saying this 5-6 years. Well, I just kind of hope it changed. I hope it changes. I remember being at lunch with my mom and, how you doing, Ty? Yeah, just kind of hoping it gets better, and it's not going to get better until you take action to get better, and so I love that you help men with that. I was going to start in a different direction, but let's start there, man, because can you talk about maybe your professional career and how you've transitioned into being able to help men and some of the successes you've seen and some things around that?
Definitely. Man, it's so interesting too. I just went on a trip this last weekend. Some old friends from before I moved a couple years ago, and just going from spending a lot of time talking to people in the money Twitter space that you and I are both in, and just kind of having a general, I guess, upward momentum of life, like that positive growth mindset. Like I was able to really kind of see the shift in myself. And so it's just been interesting to kind of look back, because, we were scheduled to talk last Thursday or Friday or something. I forget. And we got bumped past the weekend. And that was actually a really good thing, because I feel like I have this other little layer, because, every time someone asks you like, hey, like, how did you get, from where you were to here? You kind of think through, well, where was I then, and what did I go through? What did I change? For me, I was, as a classroom teacher, I did that for about 8 years and got my master's in teaching and national board and all this stuff, and is really, really invested in it, both like financially and like education wise and all these things. And I just got to this point where I saw like the next 30 years of my life. And I was like, okay, well, I know the year that I'll retire. I know how much I'll be making in that year. And that's just like, oh man, I don't know if I'm ready for like that's just too static, right? That's too secure. And so I actually met with a coach similar to what I do, and kind of helped me figure out, like, is this, I feel like I should be happy. I have the secure job. I have, this structure, and I'm not really happy. So how do I move forward? And anyway, I worked with a coach who helped me kind of just basically understand that I had unlimited options. And that was just, it was strange, it was freeing. I went from there to working at a church as a student director. And really, it was kind of like the same thing I'd been doing as a teacher, but a bigger focus on some of the design elements in the one-on-one. And then about 2.5 years ago, I did another shift toward working just one-on-one as a coach. Excuse me. And that was up at, like, just working with one-on-one people up and down the East Coast, executive function skills, and basically helping people get organized and manage time and create, plans and things like that. And what I realized, and this was because I was kind of in the verge of going independent, which I did at the beginning of this year. And one of the things I realized is that even if you have all of those tools like in place, and you know how to plan your time well and organize and this and that, if you don't have a clear direction that you're heading in, if you don't have like a driving force that is just kind of bringing all these different random pieces of your life together, it's hard to really kind of get any meaningful momentum. And so one of the things that I decided to do when I just went independent and left the company, was to kind of combine those two things, the idea of having a really clear direction, and kind of a driving force, and then also like the tools to carry it out. So anyway, kind of a, done that. And then this last little step, I guess that's my kind of professional steps that I've taken. Going back, I went back to Idaho this last weekend and saw these guys. And it was interesting because I feel like I've been in this other stage of professional growth that's like facilitated by money Twitter, like you get influenced by like, hey, read this book and this book. And hey, have you been journaling? And so I've just been, I've been exposed to more like-minded thinkers, and I've sought out like-minded thinkers. You're actually one of the early people that I was like, okay, that's someone I want to be really intentional about connecting with, because I love, the mindset and energy. Anyway, so it's like, there's just been this last little stage of like, kind of coming into my own as a coach and seeing my own personal growth and development as well. It's been, really eye-opening.
That's amazing, man. A couple points to take off there. Number one, I think hiring a coach is, I joke with Zach Hommel when I was texting him even a couple days ago that I ripped you off. I stole from you so much, man. I'm like, I can't believe the little amount of money you charged me and where my life went. And I'm talking about my faith, my marriage, my finances, my fitness, my mindset. I mean, just having somebody be able to zoom out and help you get really intentional and focused with your life is amazing. And, we got to volunteer at a nursing home pre-COVID a few years ago, where we got to know a lot of the residents. And when you said that point of, I could see my whole life planned out, it reminded me of one of the ladies I talked to there who, she said, hey, the biggest regret I had, I'm in my 90s now. I always felt this tug that God put this thing in me. I was always really good at making quilts, and I would make them for a couple friends, and all these friends would tell me you should start a business around that. And I always thought, someday, but I've got this safe job, I've got kids. And she's like, and now I'm in the last season of life. I realize it, and it's too late. And I wish I could have tried that. And that was, I remember getting bills and being like, I'm not going to work corporate the rest of my life. Like, I'm going to go and go where I feel called to go. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. I can go back and knowing that I shot my shot. But good for you, man. Cause it sounds like you had that safe route. Everything was all planned, and you kind of could see it, but you felt that deeper tug, it sounds like.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with, I think, having going that route. But I think maybe a good way to look at it is that we have different, we all have like these kind of different core drivers, right? And the first two, like the main driver is for like order and like for things to make sense, right? Security. But the second driver, and so that's where things like having a pension plan and having a tenure and a third-year job, like those things feel really good. And even things like having it, a weekly routine and a daily routine, those things give us a sense of security. But the second most important driver is the need for like variety and like for chaos, basically, for things to not go the way that you expect. And so it's sort of like this paradoxical thing where we might be more in one camp than the other and feel unhappy because we're just maybe not looking at the whole picture.
That's awesome. So you help men kind of discover that, it sounds like, when you're talking through it with them, because I probably could have really used you about 5 years ago, brother. Just I actually remember even tears coming down my eyes one night where I was sitting there and I was telling my wife, where you made a point to, it's not wrong to just love that corporate career and do that. My dad did it. He's retired, and it's the very last day today. I'm so proud of him.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
But, he was fulfilled in his job, and he helped a lot of people there and did a great job. But I remember coming home and crying and telling my wife, like, I wish I could be like some of these other people. They're happy, but I'm just not happy there. Like, it's the same thing every day, the same conversations, the same clients. And I wish I could just go in, collect the pension, do all those things, but I don't feel fulfilled there. And I didn't really know why, but hearing you explain it right there, it kind of makes sense. My brain is probably more, I'm like a dog, brother. I like to wake up and chase the mouth and go here and go there, And so that makes a lot of sense, and having someone like you clearly help people define that, what really makes them tick, that's a powerful thing. That's very cool.
Well, and I think I'm qualified to do it because I'm pretty messed up, and like I've been like, oh, okay, you're just, I don't know, increasing your self-awareness of your own little faults and quirks. We all have them. And I know that you do the same thing and help people through their stuff. Like the more you become aware of your own problems and work through ways to solve them, the more that you can help the people around you.
Right.
And it's a cool, like investing in self-development and personal development. It's not just for you, right? It raises the quality of life for you and everybody around you.
Amen, man. That was one of my favorite verses in the Bible. What the enemy intends for harm, God will use for good. Now I look back in every area of my life, and
good.
Yeah, getting divorced was the hardest thing I ever went through. I didn't want to wake up after that for a year or so, and then being almost divorced again with my second wife was the hardest thing I ever went through, saying the D word. But growing through all that, breaking myself all the way down, and God rebuilding me back up has allowed me now to coach and help other men and do that. And I see that as God uses all those struggles. But that's funny. Can I ask you a question, Ben? Because about a half an hour ago, before I hopped on, I had a client that I was just talking to that messaged me. He's like, "Hey, I'm just having one of those days, brother. I'm everything's a struggle, And he's like, "How do you do it? It doesn't seem like you ever struggle." This is a brand new client. And I just started laughing. I sent him a video. I'm like, bro, my kid literally took a poop and then opened up his diaper and threw it out. And I had to clean that. Like, that's what I was just doing 1 minute ago. I don't.
The struggle is real.
Right, man. I'm like, we all struggle. And I love that that's why I've been attracted to your Twitter too. You're just very real and authentic. And like, I don't really like the people that just say, I'm up here, you're down here, follow me. And this is that. Well, okay, guru, who's, we're all works in progress. We're all learning together, and do you kind of relate to your clients a lot like that too? Hey, we're in this together. We're all learning.
Yeah. I mean, we're all human after all, like it doesn't matter how fancy the Twitter account is or like the branding, like we are all human. We all have, so, we're all unique, but we have common desires and we have common heartaches and common like mistakes. And, I think just, we had talked a little bit about traveling and this impacts that too. Like when you get to a point where you can just get outside of yourself and stop judging yourself based on like your perception, stop judging yourself based on the perception that you judge others with. So a lot of that comes down to like numbers and perception of authority and, money, all this and that. And like all those things are like tools and useful tools. But I think if you can just like recognize like, hey, I'm a person and I can love myself for being a human being and I don't need other qualifications besides that. That allows you to then approach other people in that same way. And then it doesn't matter if it's like the CEO of a company or a kid in a village in Africa, because they're both human beings, right? And if you can kind of recognize that any arena that you're playing in, there are rules to that game. And if you can recognize that enough to not be entrenched by them, then I think that gets to the heart of being free and being able to connect with like any human being on the planet,
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's, I remember when I was almost out of the bank, the CEO of our whole bank, this guy probably making 500 times what I make, we were emailing back and forth because we had a very wealthy client come into my branch. You want to make sure I landed him, do all these things right. And I would end every conversation with, have a great day, brother. Like the same way I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to talk to the janitor that came in. I gave a fist bump and said, have a great day, brother. I just kind of finally got to a spot in my life where I was going to be me no matter what. And I know that God loves me and that's going to be enough for me, and did you struggle with that early on, or even with Twitter? That kind of helped me a lot, because I remember the first time I shot one of those videos where I'm doing pull-ups or whatever. And I'm like watching it 50 times and then people are going to critique you and tell you your haircut sucks, this and that. And it's like, so when you put yourself out there more, you're going to get some hate, but it really kind of thickens your skin and helps you realize these people don't define my worth at all. Have you had to deal with any of that?
Definitely, man. But I think most of it, and I think this is honestly true for all of us, I think most of it's self-imposed, right? Where I don't know, like the perception of what could happen or what could go wrong, it's a bigger burden than the things that actually do, right?
So true.
Because if you think about it, like if you your goal in life isn't actually to get out of problems. Like we kind of operate from that, like if I can just get past this Thursday deadline, then things will be okay. It's like, first of all, calm down. Like, take some ownership of what you're doing. But second of all, like, if you didn't have the little and big problems in your life would just be boring. You like, problems are our life, and solving them is the stuff of life. And so I think rather than trying to get away from problems, trying to get a better quality of problem might be, a worthwhile pursuit. And another thing would be to like figure out how to enjoy the process of solving problems, right? And I think, yeah. So I think you said that you had that question of like, oh, how are you all always happy? It's like, of course we're not always happy, but I know that I have made a decision to choose happiness. I've made the decision to choose the actions that I know will facilitate a stable emotional state, a positive outlook on the world, an energized physical state. And I know that when I do those actions that facilitate those states, I'll be in a much more capable place to choose and step into that happiness, right? And so I think so often people do genuinely have unhappy lives and are genuinely like just disappointed with like, I thought life was going to be this way. It's just a bunch of crap over and over. Like, what's the deal? I think those people, a lot of people genuinely do experience that difficulty, but it's like, man, you gotta make the choice to do something about it. And I know how hard it is and how tempting it is to just say it's too much, it's too big. And so, for me, like that's where my faith, or that's a place that my faith really comes into play, is the ability to believe in something before it exists. Right. And to not just be like, okay, I and you can apply this to anything. Like, you can apply it to your business, to your relationship, to your XYZ, but to see the state of something and to not necessarily know how it's going to get there, but to believe that, for me, like, I see God guiding me, and I see, okay, I believe this is where you want me to go. And if it's not, and that becomes clear, I'll shift and I'll let go and I'll pivot toward a new direction. But I believe this is where I'm going to go. And so I'm gonna take all the actions I can to figure out how to get there. And when I hit an obstacle, I'll try to solve it. And if I can't, then I'll go around it, right? And I'll just keep doing that and keep doing that. And I think if you bring that mindset to your everyday life, it can change things, right? So you're no longer in everyday moment, you're no longer frustrated by things going wrong. You expect them, because that is like, oh, cool, life is happening today, something's gone wrong. And then you look at it, you look at it non-objectively. It's not personal. You just say, okay, well, what is the best out of the remaining options? What are the 3 things I can do? What's the best option to move me forward? And it's just a way to like get better at problem solving without having to have any emotional ups and downs along the way.
And that's huge. Yeah, I think poker has taught me a lot of that early in
yeah, I bet.
When I was losing or winning thousands and thousands of dollars, I noticed early on that my mood was dictated by that. If I was winning a lot, dude, I was the greatest guy in the world to be around. Let's go for drinks. I'm flying people here and there. When I was losing, I was a disaster of a human. And so had to really find that balance of, hey, life is going to happen. And I love what you said, that really challenged me, that, problems are going to come in. That's just a part of life, everyday life. That's going to happen. And so you had just see those as kind of more opportunities to grow through those and learn through those. And can I ask you a question? Do you think that that's possible for every person? Like when I read like Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, have you read that book?
Man, it's on my shelf to go through.
I got 100 of those books on my shelf.
I know. I'm bad, but
I mean, the premise is, right, he's in a Nazi prison camp. And he says, I can still find joy in my mind. I can still find joy. And he would actually say, I could see the moment that joy and happiness left certain people, and I would know that they were going to physically die soon after that.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about the battle being so much in your mind. And so do you kind of think that as you coach and help people and you experience some of these other hardships in your life and things like that too, that it's always a choice that anybody can kind of apply these same strategies and move the needle forward?
That's a really good question. The short answer is yes, but I want to be like sensitive to the fact that I know that when you are like in a really dark place, it doesn't seem possible, and it seems like kind of like insulting for someone to say like, hey, you know, you could be happy. Because I remember being in that spot and like, I don't know, went on a walk outside and this guy passed by and was like, how are you doing? He's like, fantastic. I just remember thinking in my head, like, how could anybody be so like rude as to, you know, be enjoying themselves? It's just, I don't know, you
You're in
get
that
like
dark pit. Yeah.
you get in these weird places where so anyway, but I think maybe a good way to think about it is that if you just say like, yeah, I'm going to try to be happy, I'm going to like muscle up the gumption, gosh darn it, it's not going to work, right? Because it's not just I feel this or I feel that. It does have to do with conditions. And I think that that's a really good way for people to approach it when they do feel overwhelmed and when they do feel like, you know, things are never going to change. I've tried everything. That's actually a really good time to say, okay, well, here's this kind of system that you can put into place without having to like really believe in it. You don't have to believe in, you don't have to be emotionally invested in working out for it to make an impact. If you keep doing it, you know, like you work out 4 or 5 times a week, and you eat some food that'll support that, you're going to see an impact that's going to make an actual change. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where I try to kind of guide people is to like give yourself the evidence that you need to help yourself believe it. And actually you had mentioned earlier the 4x48. Because you're talking about like that mentality of joy, and that's making me think of David Goggins. He talks a little bit about that, but just that, like, you know, being out in the water, like training and whatnot. And if somebody is able to crack a joke and everybody starts laughing, then like they know that they're going to be okay. But then like the one guy who doesn't join in on the laughter, it's like, oh,
yeah.
he might not make it, you know. So yeah, I think being, it requires being present and grounded and training yourself to be able to find joy.
Yeah, I do.
Everyday moments.
I remember when I was in that probably the lowest state I've ever been in, you know, and just I couldn't get off my couch for a week at a time. And if somebody had told me then, hey bro, happiness is a choice, just choose to be happy, I probably would have been like, I'm gonna go jump off.
You want to punch him in the face.
Right? Yeah. Like not in a good spot. So I do think it's so important to come at people with just not it's power of positive thinking, but actually give them tools and little systems and little like I've had clients where I've just said like, your goal today is to drink 2 waters, write 2 things you're grateful for, and take a 10-minute walk, you know, like that. We're just gonna build a little momentum and get a few wins that you can start to feel good about yourself and you can start moving forward, because sometimes you are just stuck, and that's okay. I think a lot of people will get there in life where you do just feel stuck, but it's then just to start to build that little momentum. And then you said you'll start to see some results from it, right? Like, and that makes you feel good. And in turn makes you want to do it more. So it's just trying to get those first few little wins. Like probably the biggest mentor in my life, Eddie Lowen, as a preacher from Springfield, at my lowest point, when I told him basically, I don't really even want to live, man. You know, like I just don't see a point in life. And he just kind of challenged me, hey, Ty, you've been going in this negative direction so far. Like, can we pump the brakes here and just take a millimeter back, and then a millimeter back, and a millimeter back? And what's that look like for you? And he kind of helped me work through that and reverse engineer back where I wanted to go. So do you work with guys on that as well, where they kind of feel stuck, lost, aimless, purposeless?
Yeah. So most of the people that I work with are probably like a couple years away from a midlife crisis, and they could like see the potential for it, and I don't want that to happen. or they are a couple years out of it where they did go through something really difficult and have kind of done a bit of grieving, I guess, of whatever happened and are ready to move forward. But it's not totally exclusive to that. But you mentioned the idea of being stuck, and I think that like we can feel stuck in the big picture, like I'm stuck in the long term in my life, and then often that leads to feeling stuck in the moment. And you're kind of alluding to something that I wanted to kind of just jump on board with to get like it does come down to movement. Like I'm not a fitness coach, but I will advise every single person I work with to, we're going to get some fitness scheduled in because I know what an impact that's going to have on your mental state, right? Your emotional state. And if you can apply that in like a really short-term situation too, if you are in this place where you just kind of feel stuck, physically getting up and moving and like making that decision it's like the first little stone or like the first little domino, right? And so if you can make that decision, I'm going to stand up from my desk and I'm going to walk around, go outside and walk around the building. You've given yourself one little win, and that movement, that state of movement, you can now shift the focus. Okay, I'm going to choose to think about something that makes me happy, right? Because you made another second little one, and then the third one, I'm going to choose the language that I tell myself about the rest of the day. You can kind of just stack little behaviors like that to shift, your state.
Super powerful strategy, man. And yeah, I think if you're depressed, the only thing you want to do is, your brain's kind of designed to seek comfort too. So, okay, lay on the couch and then watch Netflix and eat bad food. Well, you also don't get any feedback when you do that. So you're not putting yourself at risk. But if you do get up and you do make yourself move, I always say like, object in motion tends to stay in motion, object at rest and stay at rest. And it's like, when I start to feel myself tired now, what I do is go out to my garage, put a couple praise music songs on and rip off a few pull-ups or push-ups, not even for the physical benefit. I don't even care. It's just training my mind. Hey, let's get up and move. Let's thank God. Let's get a couple easy wins here and then move forward. You know, I think that's really powerful, man.
I love that.
That's awesome. Well, can I ask, because you alluded a little bit ago, I wrote a note down. You think that people need that bigger vision and bigger kind of deeper meaning behind it, right? Where it sounds like you were safe, you're going at that job. When did you start to feel that tug? And then how do you help other guys kind of discover maybe what their deeper meaning is, or their deeper purpose, or how would you advise guys to kind of go about that, or girls?
Yeah, good question. It's interesting because I'm at a place in my life where I'm not really surprised when people have different ways of living and they're like, this, your way is crazy. This works for me. It's like, okay, that's really cool. So for some people, this might not be the case, but I do think that we all have an underlying purpose.
So too.
And I walk guys through a self-assessment, and we'll kind of look at the different big areas. We'll kind of analyze, like relationship and professional status and finances and connection and travel, we'll kind of go through different areas.
So they're kind of asking themselves those right questions. You're kind of helping them discover and ask themselves, probably they've never done that either, right?
Yeah, kind of just like step outside of the jar and say, like, number one, how would I rate myself in this area? And number two, like, is this actually important to me or not? Yeah. And then kind of lining that up with some of like the underlying driving forces, usually end up with kind of a map of either something that's very clearly important. Like it might be, like I have a friend who just started coaching Little League. He and his wife don't have kids. They had tried, but they're unable. And he's now found this other, activity that really gives them meaning. So if we were doing a self-assessment, something would have come up under probably like leadership and kind of like leadership and connection type stuff. And so we would be able to highlight, okay, here's something that gives you a sense of fulfillment. And then we could kind of explore that a little bit more to see, like, is it specifically this coaching thing? Is it helping people in general? Are there other, and then from there, like, are there other service type things? Like maybe it's, maybe you and your wife go to a soup kitchen once a month, or maybe you maybe you save up and go on a mission trip once a year or something like that. But finding other ways to kind of tap in specifically to what helps you feel like you, to help you feel like you're doing what you're meant to do. And it's going to be a little bit different for different people, right? Like some people get that sense from service, some people get it from, being able to make delicious food and have people enjoy it. So I think having the flexibility to help people figure out what that is for them, and then just intentionally building it into your life, right? I think it's so easy for us to get in our heads about why things are the way they are and overthink and overanalyze. Sometimes you just need a good night's sleep, like several good nights sleep in a row, and some exercise and some decent food. And like sometimes you just need to kind of get back to normal and get back to like baseline. Mm-hmm. And then just actually look at things for how they are. Look at things with gratitude, and don't make things worse than they are, and make the next best choice.
Yeah, it's so true. You mentioned earlier too, we build up problems in our head that usually don't even come true. And I remember I was kind of laughing at myself when you were talking, thinking when we moved from Illinois to Vegas like 2.5 years ago, I'd created all these problems in my head. And now I smile looking back because I actually journaled about some of these problems that were, what are we going to do about this or this? None of them happened. I literally wasted so much time, like probably days and weeks of my life, like worrying about these problems that none of them happened. And it's pretty crazy. One thing I wrote down here too, and I think this is why I love you so much, Ben. And by the way, this is a good opportunity to say I'm going to link everything Ben does below. I want to link his Twitter, his coaching services. Reach out to this guy, give him a follow. He's an awesome champ, man. So reach out. But I think this is why we get along too, is because you mentioned and alluded to there's not just one way. And if one thing frustrates me on Twitter, and I love Twitter more than anybody, I love our community so much, but it's these guys who are like, if you don't eat 19 sausages a day, never eat vegetables, you can't win. If and it's like,
you can eat beef liver or you can shut up.
It's like, dude, there is more than one path to win. Like I coach a guy who is shredded head to toe, and he's been a vegan for 7 years, and then I coach another guy who's carnivore and he's shredded head to toe. And it's like, there's more than one path to victory. And I love what you say and how you help people align what's best for you. Like you got to discover what works for you, not what some guru living in Maui who tells you to meditate 6 hours a day. Well, guess what? I got 3 kids. I don't have 6 hours a day to meditate, This stuff really fires me up because I do feel like a lot of these coaches and a lot of these other people will kind of, it has to be this way. But it sounds like what you're saying, and I think that's why I resonate with you a lot, is no, let's discover what's best for you. This might work for me. Maybe you have a takeaway. Maybe you take part of it, some of it, all of it, or none of it. But let's figure out what works for you.
It really has to be, I think for it to be sustainable, it has to be adaptive, right? I used to live in Seattle, and like there's a couple tall skyscrapers there, and the Columbia Towers is like this tall black skyscraper, and during a storm, it'll move like 6 feet back and forth just from the wind.
That's crazy.
And it's because it's like, small, you probably wouldn't notice if you were in the building, but I feel like that's, for a steel and glass structure, that's a good amount of space. And it's because they have flexibility built in so that if there are earthquakes, it doesn't, it doesn't topple, it just kind of waves. And I think that really has to be our approach to our own lives as well, for things to be sustainable, because life, whatever your plans are, life is going to mess them up sooner or later, right? So, like one of the key things that I work with clients on, or one of the key strategies, is just a quick practice of grounding and gratitude, where you basically just get yourself centered into the moment. And this is something that you can do as part of your morning routine. But sometimes you're running late, or the kids didn't want to get dressed or whatever it was, and my younger son would wear just pajamas to school every day. If I let him, it's awesome. But whatever it might be, like you can also do that little grounding and gratitude practice just in the car, or on your bike or walk or bus or whatever your commute is. And so I think having ways for it to be like a fixed outcome, like a fixed outcome. I'm going to feel a state of gratitude. That being more important than I'm going to sit down with my coffee in my favorite chair and go through this 3-step process. Okay, because it puts the focus on the process rather than on the outcome. You might have a you might be in a more relaxed state overall if you do it in the way that feels comfortable. But I think for something to really be sustainable, you have to be able to do it on the fly too. So kind of having like a
Definitely
a
agree.
lunchbox version of it.
Yeah, you give yourself some grace. I tell people that a lot too. With today's, actually, I know this because I tweeted yesterday, but today's day 1406 in a row without missing a day that I've journaled gratitude. Now,
Nice.
most of those are just in my phone notes where I keep those, and probably 70%. But some of those days are in my physical journal too, where I actually go into depth and write down about my day. Some of them are on Facebook where I make it private for just me and my wife. And I just list all the gratitude, and then it pops back in the memories. And that's been kind of a fun thing too.
Cool.
Some of them I have just said out loud. It's chaotic. The kids are sick. I'm sick. And I just have a day where I say, you know what, God, thank you for these blessings. And that's got to be good enough for that day, you know? So I agree with you 100%, man. Like having kind of that baseline, what you normally do is in my phone notes or in my physical journal, but you got to give yourself grace on some of those days. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent, right?
Yeah. Well, and that consistency, it's, if you put in reps, you will get stronger, right? And if you put in reps to your mental decision-making process, then your ability to choose becomes stronger. And that's, I think that, we were talking about how if you're in a really dark place, the idea of choosing happiness can be like almost offensive. And I think this is, that the idea of like focusing on the strategies and doing them consistently will get you to a place where you are strong enough to choose happiness, strong enough to choose, a state where you can like relax and trust yourself and trust people.
I like that, man. That's well said. Well, I have about 15 other topics that we haven't even covered. I did want to ask about the story of your collapsed lung and how that happened and overcoming that. Was that one of the lower points in your life? I can imagine losing your health at a young age. And can you kind of talk us through that and how you overcame that? And then the story of 2 years later doing a crazy challenge and,
Yeah, man. So, okay. So my lung collapsed in, like summer 2020. Yeah, am I counting right? And you would think that it would be bad. I mean, it was bad. I did like kind of think that I was going to die because it felt like a heart attack. It was just like started to kind of get that creeping pain and felt a little bit like cold. And it's like, okay, well, this might be it.
Sooner than I expected.
But my wife and I went through some trauma in 2019. That was the lowest point of my life. Just very, very dark place mentally for a long time. And coming out of that is kind of a whole other story. But coming out of that, one of the things that I decided was like, I'm going to, that idea of like, I don't necessarily know the how, but I'm going to commit to building a life that I love and to figuring out how to enjoy the process. And there's been a lot of pieces of that. And one of the really pieces that I kind of quickly saw evidence of was that when I exercised and worked out, that I would feel better mentally. And so I kind of went through this process of like flip-flopping where I'd work out really hard and then I wouldn't work out for a couple of days. And we had driven over to Missouri for which is like a long drive with kids. We're in South Carolina. We drove over there for a 4th of July weekend and came back. And so I hadn't sleep schedules had been weird, hadn't been eating healthy, hadn't worked out in like almost a week. And then I hit the workout like super hard. And later that night, like I could feel it like starting to feel like a heart attack where it sort of started tightening up and some pain down my left arm. And long story short, my lung had collapsed like half the size. So interesting too. This shows I probably need to work on communication with my family a little bit, but like later on, I had called my dad and I was like, yeah, I had, had a pneumothorax, and they had asked me if it was genetic, and I told him no, because it's really weird. He's like, oh yeah, actually I had that too. And he's like, and also
no idea.
Your sister did as well. It's like, what?
Maybe that'd be good to go over in a family meeting at some point,
we need to have like some family communication times. But anyway, like so I had like a bit of a genetic predisposition toward it. And then I think the physical stress kind of pushed it over the edge. But I knew, I don't know, it was sort of like, I had already gone through the worst, and I had already gone through the stage of deciding that I'm going to create a life that I love. And so when I went through this, when I had the collapsed lung, that decision had already been made, right? It's sort of like, oh, I'm getting knocked back, but I'm just like, I've got a little energizer battery and I'm just going to keep paddling forward. And that's sort of what it felt like. It's like, okay, it was disappointing. It was like, okay, so instead of working out, I'm just, now I can walk. So that's what I can do. So that's what I'm going to do. And then, I did that, and I did that, and I did that. And then eventually it's okay, now I can bump it up to the next step and to the next step. And yeah, I mean, I think it was good. I think I think all these challenges that are put in our path are actually to benefit us, that they are to show us love in some way. And I think that getting the pneumothorax when I did was a really good way of showing me how to be patient, and showing me like, hey, if you are serious about building a business, about rebuilding your marriage, about getting in better physical shape, about doing these things, you have to understand that it's going to take time and it's going to take persistence. So I think that God took me from that to running the 4x48 as a way to show like, hey, it's going to hurt. It's going to suck. You're going to want to give up a lot. But if you're just persistent, you can, do something that you wouldn't have been able to imagine. And so then with that 4x48, like I met with Matt Izzo, who I know you've talked to, and great guy. I made a plan. I had like 12 little boxes. I ran 4 miles every 4 hours, and I went through the steps, man. Like I made a plan for how to do it, and I went through the steps, and I still didn't really believe that I could do it, and even until like I'd finished the thing. And then I was like, well, you sort of like take away the need to like believe that I'm a runner. It's like, well, here's video evidence that I ran this thing. So and that's kind of what I mean too. Like in every area of our lives, we can create a plan and then execute on that plan and give ourselves the evidence that we are the men that we choose to be. And when you design your life to be, someone that you're proud of, and someone that your kids will be proud of, that your spouse will be proud of, when you design your life that way and live with intention, yeah, man, it changes everything.
Yeah, that one hits hard, where you're proud of yourself, at the end of the day. And that's what I actually texted my client this morning. I said, hey, I'm having a little struggle bus day too, man. Let's prove to ourselves who we are. This is an opportunity today to stack a few wins and kind of prove to ourselves. It's easy when it's easy and you're coasting and everything's going your way, that you're not really growing through that stuff, right? But it's through the days that might be a little harder. It is, like you said, an opportunity to actually grow. And something else you said that I wrote down, which I think is so profound. I don't know how I was going to get there, but I knew why. And man, I think that so often when people are stuck, they focus on the how. Well, how am I going to get from a collapsed lung to running 48 miles? Like that and it seems overwhelming. And so there's no reason to really start, but you start with the why. Hey, why I'm going to get there is because I'm going to be this man. I'm going to rebuild my marriage, business, body, life with the design I want. And so I think that was a really powerful takeaway, that to know that why first, instead of the how will work itself out as long as you know the why.
I think you can have different types of whys as well. Like you can actually, it's a little I should look it up. It's in one of my journals, but you can write it out for like your selfish whys, your family whys, and like your vision or mission whys. Because some days the thing that's going to really drive you is like your big vision for your life, like helping other people fulfill their mission and become better men. Sometimes that is going to be what's going to drive you. Some days, like it's gonna be, for my kids, like I want to show my kids what it looks like to be a strong human being and to be kind and compassionate and live that out. And some days it's like, well, like feels good to be in shape. Like that's an okay why for that, Jared. Like you can kind of have like these different whys that you tap into, and actually even use that as like you can kind of like create a bank, and depending on the day, like you might just be more motivated by a different thing.
I love that, man. I'm gonna explore that a lot more. If you have any articles or anything on that, send them my way, because I love that. That sounds like a great tweet thread that you should put out, man.
I think so. Okay.
Because I do kind of think of that in my own life. Certain days my alarm goes off, and what's driving me to get up is I want my kids to see me. I want to be better for them. Some days it's like just a vanity thing, like, hey buddy, you're starting to get chubby, let's get to the gym.
Yeah. But the thing is, your body doesn't care. Like regardless of what your motivation is, if you do the work and you put in the right nutrition, your body is going to respond by growing muscle. It's like okay.
Yeah, so. Very true. I like you're kind of almost withdrawing from the bank of whys, and you have several of them to choose from when you wake up.
That's right.
I kind of like that, man. That's awesome.
That's right, man.
Then I would say there's 12 more. I didn't even get into the missionary story, but you know what? We had one that we recorded about 8 or 9 minutes. I'll just ask my editor to link on the end of this so we can go over that a little bit. And then maybe you could come back on at some point too.
Cool, man.
I get to do a client call here in a few minutes. I always end everyone with what I call rapid fire questions. So
let's hear.
If you're cool, can we just fire off some rapid fire questions? And again, guys,
yes, sir.
Everything Ben does below, please give him a follow. Please check out his stuff. He's a great guy, as you can obviously tell. But let's get into these rapid fire questions, brother. All right. What is your favorite and most impactful book you've ever read, excluding the Bible?
That's a good one, man. Okay, I've got to pull one from fiction and one from nonfiction. For fiction, it's got to be Return of the King, which is the third. The Lord of the Rings is really like one book, but it's the third book, and I think this guy didn't write very many books, but this is like the best of his writing style. And the story of like loyalty and courage and friendship like really shaped me early on. Like I read it when I was like just barely able to get through the dang thing. And then I read it again in college, and then I think one more time later on, but it's that really impacted me deeply. And then the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People by Stephen Covey is just
great book.
It's one that I think you could read every month if you had the patience to, and you get something new out of it. So yeah,
those are good choices. I like it. Can I ask, when you're running now or you're out for walks, do you put on songs, or do you go no music, or what kind of stuff are you listening to when you're out?
It kind of depends. I do a lot of podcasts when I'm running, and I actually run the same route, so I can kind of just go onto autopilot, and like I'll just get really interested in the podcasts. Mindset Mentor is a good one that I like. I've listened to some of yours actually recently on a run.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, on a run in Seattle because I was traveling last weekend. So yeah, man, usually podcasts, but I have a lot of music that's just kind of I don't know. I don't listen as much music with words these days as I used to. Like I kind of want my own thoughts to be the prominent voice most of the time.
I like that, man. That's cool. I've been listening to sermons on some of my longer runs before I got sick. And I was like, I joked with one of my preacher buddies. I'm like, that he puts his sermons on YouTube, and then I watch him. I'm like, I've never wanted your sermon to be over so much, because I know when it's over, I'm done with my run. And like, it was my long run, but that's been kind of cool for me lately. May I ask what's the best thing you do every day, or maybe that one thing that you look forward to where you say, this is I'm sink my teeth in, I'm fully present, I love this thing,
Yeah. Man, it's got to be just my morning mental priming in the morning. And I think for different people, it might be like prayer or meditation or visualization. I kind of do a blend of those things. And yeah, just it makes such a difference. It's something that's any of those little habits, like beginning or end of the day, that are helpful. They're really easy to skip because life gets busy, but that one, priming my day and going through gratitude and visualizing my key objectives and what the sections of the day are going to look like. When I don't do that, I feel like I'm floundering. So, and you know, we all have days when we do that. Like it's just a good reminder that it actually works, you know?
Yep. 100%. We were on vacation a few months back and I didn't do my morning routine and I snapped at my daughter in a way that I'm so embarrassed by. Like I used a terrible tone to the point where I actually asked her to take a walk with me like a little bit later to apologize and let her know Daddy's a human being. And it was such an eye opener. I didn't get up and do the things I needed to do to fill myself up. And then I felt depleted, anxious, pulled a million directions, and I took it out on the people that I love the most. So yeah, for me, I'm the same boat, man. Getting up in the morning, that's my time with myself, God, and really setting the intention for the day. You know, I love that, man. We kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier, but if there's a guy out there or a girl out there that just says, man, I've felt stuck for so long and I just can't find any motivation or any reason to do anything, what's the one tip you would give them to kind of get unstuck?
Everyone get into movement of some kind, like physically get up and move. But then I'd say create or develop a habit of gratitude. Develop a habit of gratitude, because there is no one answer, but I do know that when you're in a state of gratitude and you have increased energy, then you're able to come up with more solutions than you would be able to otherwise. I think that we're all far more capable than we give ourselves credit for. And so really quickly, like I do grounding, like name, sight, senses, color, sounds, and then do this really quick gratitude practice where number one, you focus on something that's immediate. So I use my senses, like the blue sky, the wind on my face, the sunset last night. And then I take a next step up to something meaningful. And so it might be, wrestling with my boys yesterday, or having that quiet time this morning to get myself started right. And then that third step, I would say, choose to see the opportunity in the obstacle in front of you. And so now you're at a place where it's like, okay, I'm now grateful for the opportunity to strengthen my patience. I'm grateful for the opportunity to strengthen my time boundaries, whatever it might be. And you do those three steps so that the obstacle, switches from being overwhelming to like, you just develop this constant growth mindset with the problems that come to you.
I would guess that anybody watching this, if you did that for 30 straight days, you'd be a different person. Literally, if you just took that one thing away right there, that's super powerful, man. I love that. Thanks for sharing, brother.
It's changed me, man. It's been great.
It's awesome. Well, last question, where can people find you? Maybe what's some of your future plans, and will you come on the podcast again? Because literally I have 12 more topics I'd love to talk to you about.
Oh man, I'd love to. I'd love to come on again. I love talking with you and connecting with you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so really the focus for the rest of this year is continuing to build my coaching business. I'm about 3 months in and still have, just a lot of pieces to figure out, but I love working one-on-one with people, and I'll have a newsletter getting started with that pretty quick here too, but just Twitter is probably the easiest place to find me, at Joy Protocol.
Nice. And again, guys, we'll link everything you do below. And man, if I can ever help out in any way, man, I like getting more eyes on all your stuff.
I appreciate it.
You do too, brother. Well, and this has been Tyrompers No Limit podcast episode number, I think 35, guys, 36. I don't know. Alex, my awesome editor, is always on me about, you should know what number podcast you're on, but I feel like I never do. But anyway, I just want to say thanks, guys, for tuning in. Go be kind to others. Go be kind to yourself. Let's bless up and have the greatest day ever. And thank you so much, Ben, for coming on, brother. You're one of my favorite people on earth, and let's do it again, man.
All right, man. Love you, bro.
Love you, bro. Have the greatest day, man. See ya.
Peace.